There is a moment that almost no one talks about honestly. It happens roughly between the 3rd and 5th hour of a power outage, not the first, because in the first hour most people still believe the lights are coming back. They check their phone. They look out the window. They wait. But somewhere between hour 3 and hour 5, a different kind of thought begins. A quieter one. It starts with a question that sounds simple but carries real weight. What do we actually have? Not, what do you think you have? Not what you remember buying at some point last year. What do you actually right now have? That question changes the room. And the reason it changes the room is not because people are irrational. It is because modern life was designed, intentionally, efficiently, profitably designed, to make you not need to answer that question. Stores are open every day. Delivery arrives in 2 hours. Food is always available. Power is always available. The entire infrastructure of American daily life rests on a single assumption, that tomorrow will function exactly like today. Most of the time, that assumption holds, but not always. In February 2021, Texas experienced a winter storm that left more than 4 million households without power. Some for days, some for nearly 2 weeks. Temperatures dropped to single digits. Pipes burst. Water systems failed. People who lived in warm climate homes with no winter preparation found themselves in a genuinely dangerous situation, not because they were careless people, but because they had been told, in every small and large way, that this could not happen here. The grid was reliable. The infrastructure was modern. This was America. It happened. And when it happened, the people who were fine were not the ones who panicked at the right moment. They were the ones who had already answered that question. What do we actually have? Weeks before the storm arrived. This video is about 10 things. Not dramatic things. Not survivalist fantasy items. Everyday, unglamorous, quietly essential things that keep working when the power stops. Things that most households either do not have in inadequate quantities, or have never thought about systematically. And by the time we reach number 1, you may realize the most important item on this list is also the one that almost nobody mentions in these conversations. Let's start. Number 10 is something most people in America own at least one of, but almost nobody owns enough of. And almost nobody has thought about where it actually is right now. It is the manual can opener. This sounds almost too obvious to say, but obvious is not the same as prepared. According to food industry data, canned goods are consistently among the top 5 items purchased during emergency preparation events. People buy canned food by the case: green beans, tuna, soup, chili, beans, fruit. They feel good about it. They stack it in the pantry, and they feel like they have done something real. And then a long power outage arrives, and someone opens the kitchen drawer and discovers that the can opener, the electric one, the nice one, the one that practically opens itself, is now a decorative object. The manual can opener is not just a backup tool. It is the key to the food you already own. Without it, your canned goods are not food. They are sealed metal containers sitting on a shelf while your family gets hungry. But here is the part that matters beyond the obvious. Not all manual can openers are the same, and most households have either a cheap one that barely works, or one that has been in the drawer for 15 years without anyone testing it. The best manual openers use a side-cut design rather than a top-cut design. They are easier to use, they leave no sharp edges, and they do not fail after 50 cans. Brands like OXO Good Grips have been rated consistently for durability. You want 2 of them, one for home use, one in a bag or kit you would grab if you had to leave. There is a specific failure mode that happens with cheap can openers during extended emergencies. People open several cans successfully, and then the mechanism slips, or the blade dulls, or the gear skips. At that point, in the middle of a meal preparation, they are improvising. They are using knives. They are frustrated, Small frustrations compound in low-power situations in ways they do not compound on normal days. Number 10. Sounds small. It is small. That is exactly why it disappears from awareness, and exactly why it matters. Number 9. Involves light, and it involves a specific type of light that most households either do not own or own in a form that will disappoint them when it actually matters. The item is the hand crank or solar-powered lantern, not a flashlight. Here is the distinction and why it matters. Flashlights are directional. They illuminate one area at a time. They require you to hold them. They are useful for finding something in a dark room, for walking a path, for checking a circuit breaker. But they are not designed to light a room where a family is trying to eat together, where a child is trying to read, where someone is trying to administer first aid, or where people are simply trying to sit through a dark evening without feeling like they are in a crisis. Lanterns provide ambient light. They hang. They sit on a table. They turn a dark room back into something that resembles normalcy. And normalcy, in an extended power outage, is not a luxury. It is a morale resource. The hand crank and solar-powered versions matter for a specific reason. Batteries run out. This is not theoretical. If a power outage lasts 4 days, and you are running flashlights and battery-powered lanterns through the night, you will go through batteries faster than you expect. Especially if you have children who leave lights on, which children do. Always, in every situation. The appeal of a hand crank lantern is that it is self-regenerating. You put energy into it, literal human energy, and you get light back. Solar lanterns regenerate passively during daylight hours and then provide hours of light in the evening. There is a product category worth knowing about: collapsible solar lanterns. When deflated, they're the size of a pancake. When inflated and charged, they provide surprisingly bright, warm ambient light for hours. The Empowered Lucy series became notable during the 2021 Texas disaster because people were using them inside their homes during the week-long blackout. They cost between $15 and $30. They weigh almost nothing. They never run out of power as long as there is sun somewhere in the day. The mistake most families make is owning one flashlight per person and thinking that covers the light problem. It does not. Flashlights handle movement. Lanterns handle living. Number 8 is about warmth, and specifically about a form of warmth that requires no electricity, no fuel, and no open flame, and that most people have never purchased deliberately. It is the Mylar emergency blanket, also called a space blanket or thermal blanket. A single Mylar blanket weighs about 2 ounces and folds to roughly the size of a deck of cards. It reflects approximately 90% of body heat back to the person using it. During the 2021 Texas freeze, emergency workers distributed them to people trapped in cars, in shelters, and in homes where heating systems had failed. During the 2012 Colorado wildfires, during the 2005 Hurricane Katrina relief effort, during nearly every major American disaster of the past 2 decades, Mylar blankets appear consistently in the hands of rescue workers and in the survival stories of people who made it through difficult nights. They are not comfortable. This is worth saying clearly. They are loud. They crinkle with every movement. They are not soft. They are not the blankets you pull off your bed when you are cold. But they are thermodynamically extraordinary. In a situation where a house has dropped to 40 degrees overnight because the heating system has been off for 18 hours, a Mylar blanket is the difference between shivering through the night and sleeping. The deeper point is about thermodynamics and home insulation. Most homes, even well-built American homes, lose their retained heat faster than people expect when the heat source is removed. A house at 70 degrees with the heat off in a cold climate will drop to 50 degrees within 6 to 8 hours. By hour 12, in a serious cold event, interior temperatures can fall below comfortable living thresholds. By hour 24, without added warmth from any source, the situation becomes medically relevant, especially for elderly family members, infants, or anyone with circulation issues. A pack of 10 Mylar blankets costs less than $10. You store them in a closet, in a car, in a kit, and you never think about them until the night you need one, when they become the most important thing in the house. Number 7 is water, but not the way most people think about water. Most people, when they think about emergency water, think about buying water. Cases of bottled water. Gallon jugs. They are not wrong, but they are solving the surface version of the problem. The deeper version of the water problem in a power outage involves filtration and sanitation. Because many water emergencies in America are not situations where water is completely absent. They are situations where the water that comes out of the tap is either off, contaminated, or unsafe to drink. During the 2021 Texas winter storm, millions of people lost water pressure entirely when pipes burst. But even after pressure was partially restored, boil water advisories were issued across the state, meaning the water was flowing, but it was not safe to drink without boiling. And the ability to boil required either gas power or a functioning stove. Many homes had neither. The item here is a gravity-fed water filter, not a filtering water bottle, not a pitcher with a filter cartridge, but a true gravity-fed system. The Sawyer Squeeze, the Katadyn Be Free, and especially the Berkey system are the ones most frequently mentioned in emergency preparedness communities. The Berkey in particular is notable because it requires no power, no pressure, and no moving parts. You pour water in the top chamber, water from a stream, water from a collected rain barrel, water from a bathtub filled before the emergency began, and gravity pulls it through ceramic or activated carbon filters that remove bacteria, protozoa, heavy metals, and some chemical contaminants. Here's the fact most people do not know. The average American uses between 80 and 100 gallons of water per day when accounting for all uses: drinking, cooking, hygiene, toilet flushing. In an emergency, that number collapses to approximately 1 gallon per person per day for drinking and basic sanitation. For a family of 4, that is 4 gallons a day. For a week, that is 28 gallons. 28 gallons is manageable if you have stored it. It is unmanageable if you are trying to find it after the emergency has started. A gravity filter does not solve the storage problem. It solves the quality problem. Together, stored water plus filtration, you have a real water strategy. Separately, you have hope. Number 6 is something that most people have in their homes right now and do not think of as a preparedness item at all. It is baking soda. This requires some explanation, because baking soda sounds like a baking ingredient and not a survival item. But baking soda is one of the most chemically versatile compounds in a standard household. And in a no-power situation, its range of uses becomes genuinely significant. As a cleaning agent, baking soda is a mild abrasive that can clean cookware, surfaces, and teeth without requiring soap or detergent. This matters in an extended emergency where running water for rinsing is limited. You use less water when you clean with baking soda because it does not create the same kind of lather and residue that conventional soap does. As a personal hygiene tool, it controls odor through pH neutralization rather than fragrance masking. In a situation where showering is limited, applying a small amount to underarms, feet, and other odor-prone areas provides real and measurable relief. This is not a minor issue in a multi-day emergency. Hygiene degradation affects morale, which affects decision-making, which affects safety. As a dental care tool, it is mildly antibacterial and gently abrasive in a way that cleans tooth surfaces without requiring commercial toothpaste. Studies published in the Journal of Clinical Dentistry have shown baking soda toothpaste to be more effective at plaque removal than non-baking soda formulations. In a power outage, dental hygiene is rarely the first concern, but in a week-long emergency, it becomes a real quality-of-life factor. As a fire-extinguishing agent, it smothers small grease and chemical fires by releasing carbon dioxide when heated. This is not a replacement for a fire extinguisher, but in a kitchen situation where open flame is being used for cooking and a small grease fire starts in a pan, Throwing baking soda on it immediately is the correct response. Most people do not know this. They reach for water, which makes grease fires dramatically worse. A 4-pound bag of baking soda costs less than $4. Almost no household emergency kit mentions it. Almost every household that has experienced an extended emergency and had it available has found uses for it they did not anticipate. Number 5 is where the list begins to feel different. This is the halfway point. And from here, the items connect more directly to comfort, to psychological survival, and to the specific kind of fear that most preparedness videos do not address honestly. Number 5 is a battery-powered or hand-crank AM/FM radio with NOAA weather band capability. In 2026, this item sounds almost retro. Why would you need a radio when you have a smartphone? The answer is exactly what happened in Houston during Hurricane Harvey in 2017, and in Louisiana during Katrina in 2005, and in Puerto Rico during Maria in 2017, and in California during the Camp Fire in 2018. Cell towers fail. They fail because they lose power too. They fail because they are overwhelmed by call volume when everyone in a region is trying to call at the same time. They fail because the physical tower infrastructure is damaged. They fail because carrier networks experience cascading failures when grid power is interrupted across wide geographic areas. When your cell signal disappears, your smartphone becomes an extremely expensive clock with a camera. A battery-powered or hand-crank radio with no AA weather band access broadcasts continuously, directly from government emergency management systems, with no dependency on carrier networks, no dependency on internet infrastructure, and no dependency on your battery charge. No AA weather radio broadcasts on 7 dedicated frequencies across the United States, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with automated alerts and human-read emergency information. During Hurricane Harvey, NOAA Weather Radio provided evacuation route updates and shelter information to people whose cell service had completely failed. During the Camp Fire, it provided air quality warnings and evacuation orders to people in remote areas where cell coverage was already limited before the fire disrupted it further. The psychological dimension of this item is something that almost nobody discusses. The sound of a calm, authoritative voice on a radio during a dark, uncertain night is stabilizing in a way that silence is not. Human beings are social creatures who take cues from each other and from sources of perceived authority. A radio that tells you what is happening, where help is moving, and what to do next is not just an information tool. It is a fear management tool. The Midland ER310 and the Kaito KA500 are consistently rated among the best emergency radios for home preparedness. Both include hand crank, solar, and battery power options. Both include no AA weather band. Both cost under $60. This is not a retro item. This is the item that worked in every major American disaster of the past 20 years when everything else stopped. Number 4 is about cooking, but specifically about cooking without electricity, without natural gas if the gas is off, without a grill if the weather does not permit outdoor grilling, and without any of the normal kitchen infrastructure people rely on without realizing it. The item is a propane or butane camp stove with adequate fuel supply. Here is a detail most people do not think through. In the United States, approximately 41% of homes use natural gas for cooking. In a widespread power outage, natural gas service is usually maintained. The gas distribution system operates independently of the electrical grid. But in situations involving earthquakes, certain types of infrastructure damage, or extended regional disasters, gas service can be interrupted. And for the 59% of American homes that use electric stoves, electric ranges, glass-top induction cooktops, electric ovens, a power outage means zero cooking capability. A camp stove running on propane or butane small canisters provides a reliable, self-contained cooking surface that works indoors with adequate ventilation or outdoors in any weather. The key word in that previous sentence is adequate. Camp stoves using open flame burners produce carbon monoxide and must never be used in sealed indoor spaces. This is a real danger and a real cause of emergency room visits during power outages. The rule is simple. If you are using a fuel-based camp stove, a window must be open or you must be outside. The Coleman 2-burner propane stove has been in continuous production since 1951. That longevity is not accidental. It is reliable, it is repairable, it works in wind better than single-burner designs, and a standard 16-ounce propane canister provides approximately 2 hours of cooking time on a single burner. For a family preparing 3 hot meals a day, 2 canisters per day is a reasonable planning estimate for cooking time. Hot food in an emergency is not just calories. It is comfort. It is the thing that makes a bad situation feel manageable rather than catastrophic. The difference between eating cold beans from a can and eating a hot bowl of soup that someone actually cooked is a morale difference that is difficult to quantify but impossible to miss if you have experienced both. Store 4 to 6 propane canisters minimum. Check them annually. Propane does not expire, but connections and valves can degrade. Know where you stored the stove before you need it at midnight in the dark. Number 3. The emotional weight increases here because number 3 is about something that most preparedness content ignores entirely: the mental state of the people in the house. The item is a collection of physical, non-digital entertainment. This sounds trivial. It is not. During extended power outages, the first few hours have a kind of novelty to them. It is unusual. It is a little bit of an adventure. Children are fascinated. Adults feel the mild excitement of disruption to routine. But novelty fades. Hours pass. Evening comes. There is nothing to watch. There is nowhere to go. The phones begin to die, and the psychological weight of extended darkness and inactivity begins to press on everyone in the house, especially children, who handle disruption to routine poorly, and especially people who manage anxiety through distraction, which is most people. Card games, board games, physical books, puzzles. These are not luxury items in a power outage. They are the specific tools that prevent the kind of cabin fever deterioration that leads to short tempers, poor decisions, and the compounding stress that makes a difficult situation worse. FEMA's Community Emergency Response Team training explicitly includes psychological resilience as a survival component. Research conducted after Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Sandy identified prolonged boredom and mental inactivity as significant contributors to stress-related health events during the recovery period. The human brain needs stimulation. When it cannot have its normal stimulation, it will find other outlets. And in a confined, dark, stressful environment, those outlets are rarely positive. A deck of cards takes up no space and teaches children that fun does not require a screen. A puzzle gives adults something to focus on during long hours. A physical book does not require charging. And a family that is engaged, even in something simple, is a family that is managing its situation rather than being managed by it. This is where preparedness becomes philosophy. You are not just storing calories. You are building the conditions for your family to remain emotionally functional in a situation that is designed to erode functionality. Number 2. Number 2 is the item that most people own fragments of, but almost nobody has assembled correctly. And the reason it is number 2 on this list is because it addresses the gap between the first few hours of an emergency, which most people can navigate, and the multi-day reality of a serious power outage, which most people cannot. The item is a complete, organized first aid kit, not the kit from the drugstore that comes in the red nylon bag with 36 pieces, most of which are adhesive bandages in 3 sizes and a pamphlet you will never read. A real first aid kit, one that addresses the specific medical challenges that emerge in extended power outages and household emergencies. Here is why this is different from what most people have. In a normal day, a minor cut gets cleaned, bandaged, and monitored. If it gets infected, you notice it. You call your doctor, you go to an urgent care if needed, and you handle it. In a multi-day power outage during a regional disaster, urgent cares may be closed, roads may be impassable, and your doctor is unavailable. That minor cut that you did not clean and dress properly on day 1 can become a significant infection by day 3. The items that most first aid kits lack but that matter most in actual emergencies are wound irrigation syringes for proper cleaning of cuts and punctures, medical-grade antiseptic like povidone iodine rather than just hydrogen peroxide, a thermometer, medical tape that actually stays on skin, sterile gauze pads in multiple sizes, elastic compression bandages, nitrile gloves in adequate quantity, oral rehydration salts for managing dehydration, and a comprehensive guide to wound care, burn, care, and blister treatment. The oral rehydration salts deserve specific attention. Dehydration is one of the most commonly underestimated medical risks during emergencies. When water is limited, when activity is elevated, when stress is high, when food intake changes. Dehydration happens faster than people expect. Children and elderly adults are especially vulnerable. Oral rehydration salts, the same formulation the World Health Organization has used in disaster relief operations for decades, replace electrolytes and accelerate hydration in ways that plain water does not. Beyond the physical contents, the organizational element matters. A kit that requires searching through a pile of unsorted items to find what you need at 2 in the morning is a kit that is failing at its function. Your first aid supplies should be sorted, labeled, and inventoried annually. Items should be checked for expiration dates. If you have prescription medications in your household, you should have a supply strategy for those as well. Most pharmacists will work with patients on early refill timing before a known weather event. The goal is to be able to handle every medical situation that does not require a surgeon without leaving your house. That is a specific and achievable goal. And it is one that most households are very far from meeting with a 36-piece drugstore kit. And now, number 1. Number 1 is not what most people would guess. It is not a dramatic item. It is not something you see in survival content online. It does not have a high production cost. It is not military grade. And in the first hour of a power outage, you will not think about it at all. But by day 2, or day 3, or by the end of the first week, it will be the thing you wish you had thought through more carefully than anything else on this list. Number 1 is a written household information document, a single physical piece of paper, or a small physical notebook that contains the critical information your household needs to function when digital systems are unavailable. This is not a checklist. This is not a pantry inventory. This is the information that normally lives inside devices and inside the systems that depend on power and connectivity. And that becomes entirely inaccessible the moment those systems go down. Here is what that document should contain. It should contain phone numbers. Not the ones in your contacts list. The ones in your contacts list are inaccessible when your phone is dead. It should contain the direct numbers for every family member, every close friend or neighbor you would call in an emergency, your family doctor, your children's school, your local police non-emergency line, your utility companies, and your insurance agent. Americans over the age of 30 generally remember a few phone numbers from the era before smartphones. Most people under 35 remember 0. Your children remember 0. When your phone is dead, your social network is gone unless it exists on paper. It should contain your medical information, your blood types, your known allergies, your prescription medications and dosages, your doctor's names and addresses, your insurance policy numbers, your pharmacy name and number. This information lives inside apps, inside online patient portals, inside email accounts, and inside the memories of medical offices, none of which are accessible without power and connectivity. It should contain your financial information in non-sensitive form, not account passwords, but account numbers, bank phone numbers, and the location of your physical documents, your deed, your lease, your vehicle titles, your insurance policies. In a disaster that affects housing, The ability to prove ownership and access insurance is the difference between rebuilding efficiently and spending months in confusion. It should contain your utility account information, account numbers and service phone numbers for electricity, gas, water, and internet, so that you can call and report service interruptions, check restoration timelines, and manage accounts without logging in through a device. It should contain a basic household map. If your household has complexity, which circuit breakers control which rooms, where the water main shutoff is, where the gas shutoff is, and how to operate it, where emergency supplies are stored. And it should contain your plan. Not just your items, your plan. Where will you go if you need to leave? Who is your meeting point if family members are separated? What is the communication protocol if cell service is down? Who is your neighborhood contact? Who is your out-of-state contact who can serve as a communication relay if local lines are congested? The reason this is number one is not because paper is more important than water or light or food. It is because the document activates everything else. Without information, your preparations become harder to use. Without phone numbers, your relationships become unreachable. Without medical information, your first aid kit is limited. Without your plan, every decision in a crisis is made from scratch, in the dark, under pressure. The National Emergency Management Association recommends physical document preparation as a primary resilience strategy. FEMA's own preparedness materials list it consistently, and yet, in household preparedness surveys conducted over the past decade, fewer than 15% of American families report having a physical emergency information document maintained and accessible. The document costs nothing. It takes one afternoon to create. It requires updating once a year. And it is the single preparedness action that most directly closes the gap between having supplies and being able to use them effectively when the moment arrives. Here is the truth that all 10 of these items point toward. Preparedness is not a state. It is not something you achieve once and then possess forever. It is a practice, a series of small, inexpensive, unglamorous decisions made before the moment of urgency, so that when that moment arrives, you are already standing in a different place than the people around you who waited. The families that do well in extended power outages are not the ones who panicked more effectively than everyone else. They are the ones who solved problems at the hardware store on a Tuesday in March when there was no emergency anywhere. They are the ones who found the manual can opener and moved it somewhere logical, who charged the radio, who wrote down the phone numbers, who filled one extra gallon jug and put it under the sink. None of these actions requires a significant financial investment. None of them requires a basement full of supplies or a bunker or a dramatic reorganization of how you live. They require something smaller and harder. The willingness to spend 30 minutes thinking about what would actually happen in your specific home, with your specific family, in a specific scenario, and then doing one thing about it. Because the shelf is never the warning. The power grid is never the warning. The empty store at the beginning of a storm is never the warning. The warning was always 3 months earlier, when the preparation was still easy, and the item was still on the shelf, and the price was still normal, and the time was still available. The people who prepared before it mattered are the people who feel calm when it matters. And calm in a crisis is not a personality trait. It is a resource. One that can only be built before the crisis begins. If you found something on this list worth acting on, write it down before you close this video. Not a mental note, an actual note. Because the gap between intention and action is exactly where most preparation ends. And if you want to continue this conversation, there is another question worth asking after this one. Not what to store, but what happens in the first 6 hours when the power goes out, and most people make the 3 mistakes that turn a minor inconvenience into a real problem. That is a different video. But it starts with a moment very much like this one.